When we hear the word wealth, I feel like almost everyone listening right now just automatically snaps to the exact same mental image.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You picture a huge bank account balance or maybe a stock portfolio.
Right, or a sprawling house, a high-end car. Because, in modern society, wealth is just a number. It's an accumulation of tangible physical things.
But what if the way we've been, conditioned to define that single word is actually a massive trap?
Yeah, and that is the exact mission of today's deep dive. We are looking at this profound philosophical framework from a text by Feng, edited by Kier, called The Three Great Treasures of Life.
And it really takes that whole one-dimensional view of success and just completely dismantles it.
It really does. It argues that you could spend your entire life obsessively hoarding wealth, building an absolute mountain of it, only to realize you are completely starving yourself.
Because the text takes the entirety of the human experience and categorizes it into three distinct types of wealth. You've got material, spiritual, and soul.
Right, and the core thesis here is that symmetric balance is a blessing. If you ignore any single one of those three treasures, you end up walking what the Source calls a deformed life road.
Which is such a vivid way to put it.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to figure out how to balance human existence, we really need to define the absolute baseline first.
Precisely. Because you can't build a life without a foundation. And that foundation is what society already accepts as wealth. Material wealth.
And the framework defines this very practically, right? As the physical items needed to sustain human bodies.
Exactly. Yes, that means currency and precious metals and real estate. But it's also just the mundane stuff, your food, your clothing, household appliances. It is the tangible, physical stuff of survival.
Now, wait a minute, though. Usually when you dive into a deeply philosophical or spiritual text, the first thing they tell you is to give away all your money.
Right, the whole ascetic monk trope.
Yeah. The narrative is almost always that money is the root of all evil, abandon your earthly possessions and go live in a cave. But looking through this source material, it doesn't demonize material wealth at all.
Not even a little bit. That's actually one of the most pragmatic aspects of this philosophy. It doesn't shy away from the biological reality of just, being human.
So it actually demands that we acquire it.
It does. It insists we absolutely must use our intelligence and hard work to create it. The logic is pretty bulletproof. Without it, you just don't have the foundation to make a living.
Because if you lack material wealth, you're faced with a really grim reality. You either starve or you are forced to become a beggar or a parasite.
Right, relying entirely on the labor of others. And if you don't know where your next meal is coming from, your heart just can't be at peace. You're in a constant state of panic.
You literally can't focus on anything higher.
Yeah.
I think of it like building a house. Material wealth is the concrete foundation and the wooden framing.
That's a great analogy.
You literally cannot live without it. Otherwise, you're just standing outside in the freezing rain. And I think here is where the friction really starts in this text. A concrete foundation alone isn't a home.
No, it's just a slab of concrete.
Right. If you pour the concrete and build the walls and then just sit there shivering on the bare floor, you've completely missed the point. And that brings us to the text's first severe warning about falling into extremes.
Yes. What happens to a person who acquires only material wealth while completely lacking the other two treasures?
The symptoms described here are honestly pretty alarming.
They are. Individuals who hoard only material wealth are described as being deeply sick. They're prone to committing crimes, struggling with severe depression, even suicide.
And it mentions they have a strong tendency to abuse both life and nature.
Yeah. And if we look at the psychological mechanism behind why this happens, it actually makes perfect logical sense.
Walk me through that. Because you'd think someone with unlimited money would be relaxed, not prone to abusing nature or committing crimes.
Well, think about what happens when you have infinite physical resources, but absolutely zero mental, emotional, or moral framework to process them.
Oh, I see. Those resources just become blunt instruments.
Exactly. You have the immense power to consume, but you lack an internal compass. Because you have no higher sense of purpose or connection to others, you try to fill that emotional void by just consuming more and more physical things.
You'll clear-cut an entire forest just to build a slightly bigger mansion because you think the next square foot of concrete will finally make you happy.
Right. It's basically an addiction model. You have the machinery of acquisition, but no software of empathy to tell you when to stop.
You just keep pressing the acquire button until the machine itself breaks down. You end up a miserable king ruling over a pile of concrete.
Spot on. So if a physical foundation isn't enough to keep a person from becoming destructive, what actually fills the structure of a human life?
And that brings us perfectly to the second treasure, spiritual wealth.
Right. If material wealth is about sustaining the physical body, spiritual wealth is about sustaining the mind and the heart.
It's defined as all the elements that enable our consciousness to remain healthy, uplifted, and free. And the inventory of what falls into this category is massive.
It really is. It's not just spirituality in the religious sense at all.
No, it includes knowledge, skills, family affection, deep friendships, even your romantic love, your reputation in your community, your positions in society.
It's essentially the entire spectrum of the human social and intellectual experience. It's the connective tissue of society.
And the text argues that without this specific type of wealth, we're basically reduced to what it calls constantly moving animals.
Just living purely by base instinct. Because without ideological and emotional richness, we become intensely lonely and profoundly bored.
It says our mentality twists. We become hot-tempered, eccentric, and prone to volatile extreme.
Because we have no meaningful connections to anchor us down.
Okay, let me challenge that for a second, though. Let's look at modern society, or like secular psychology, even mainstream self-help culture.
Okay.
The formula for a perfect life today is essentially have enough money to pay your rent, get some deep friendships, learn valuable skills, and build a good reputation.
The ultimate checklist.
Right. If you do that, society basically throws a parade for you.
Wow.
But according to this framework, if you max out spiritual wealth, you have all the friends, the knowledge, the reputation, but you don't balance it, you're still doing it wrong.
It's profoundly insufficient according to the source. And the outcome of that specific imbalance is fascinating.
Tell me about it. What happens when you're all spirit and no material?
Let's say you have immense spiritual wealth, high intellect, vast knowledge, social charm, but you completely lack material wealth because you refuse to do the hard, practical labor required to support yourself.
Okay.
The framework argues this turns you into a very specific kind of monster. You become a liar, you talk big, but you act stealthily.
Oh, wow. Wait, I know exactly who this is. This is the modern armchair philosopher.
Yes. Perfect example.
It's the guy on social media who has read 100 books on macroeconomics, has very refined tastes, talks constantly about high-level concepts, but still lives on his parents' couch and borrows his roommate's streaming passwords.
All theory, no practice. Because these individuals possess the refined desires that come with high intellect, but they lack the grounding that comes from hard, honest work.
So they become deeply opportunistic.
Exactly. They have to survive somehow, right? So they mutate into parasites who just want to eat, drink, and play on someone else's dime. Or they use that charm to become careerists and schemers.
That is such a harsh but incredibly accurate breakdown. Intellect without grounding just curdles into manipulation.
It really does. So we've established that physical comfort can leave us as destructive hoarders, and mental richness can turn us into scheming parasites.
Right, if we aren't careful. So what is the missing piece? What gives this whole structure actual profound meaning?
That is the domain of the third and final treasure, soul wealth.
And this is undeniably the most intangible of the three.
But arguably the most critical for actualization. Soul wealth is defined as the intangible energy and information that elevates life to a perfect system.
Okay, we definitely need to translate some of the terminology used here because the source lists some very specific esoteric examples.
True.
It mentions things like the psychic energy of the greatest creator, the running program of the Tao, the teachings of Buddha, and spiritual perception. For a listener who isn't steeped in Eastern philosophy, what are we practically talking about?
Well, if you strip away the specific religious vocabulary for a moment, look at the underlying mechanism. What's being described is a universal connection to something infinitely larger than the self.
Like the operating system of the universe.
Exactly. Think about the running program of the Tao. It's essentially an understanding of the natural order of things. It's the framework for understanding why we exist at all, not just how we exist.
So without soul wealth, you might know how to build a bridge, and you might have friends to walk across it with you.
But you have absolutely no idea where you are ultimately going or why the journey even matters.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting. The imagery used for someone lacking soul wealth is incredibly bleak. It says they live a muddled life as a walking corpse.
Just walking through the black of a starless night.
Going back to our Hess analogy from earlier, if material wealth is the hardware, the physical computer, And spiritual wealth represents the software apps we use to navigate society, our social networks, our word processors.
Then soul wealth is the actual electricity running through the system.
Yes, it turns it on and connects it to the wider internet.
Hmm.
Without it, you just have a very expensive, inert box.
The electricity analogy is so spot on, but we have to look at the trap of the extreme here as well, because this is where the philosophy takes a really unexpected turn.
How so?
Well, you might assume that possessing only soul wealth, ignoring money, and ignoring human relationships to focus entirely on the divine would make you a saint.
Oh, right. If someone spends 24 hours a day meditating and thinking about the cosmos, society usually reviews them. We call them enlightened.
But this framework absolutely rejects that idea.
Wait, really? It rejects it.
Vehemently. It warns that individuals who possess only soul wealth, while completely lacking material grounding and spiritual human connection, become possessed by their own delusions.
Wow.
Yeah, they dwell obsessively on spirits, deities, fortunes, and disasters. They aren't helping people, they're just playing with concepts.
The description in the text is actually chilling.
Mm.
It says they look ghost-like and become maniacal. They actually defile the names of the creator and gods.
Ghost-like is such a specific and perfect word choice.
Why ghost-like specifically?
Because a true saint still washes the dishes and helps their neighbor. A ghost just floats around completely disconnected from the physical world.
Oh, I see. If you're entirely focused on the cosmic, but you aren't working a job to seed yourself, and you have no empathy or family affection.
You are completely untethered from humanity. You essentially become a fanatic. You can't operate in the physical world, and you can't connect with the people standing right in front of you.
So your spirituality just becomes a destructive, isolating delusion. You start bringing harm to society because you've deviated from human nature.
Exactly. You become a hazard. Which brings us to the core mechanism of this entire philosophy. We've seen these three terrifying sicknesses: the destructive materialist, the scheming spiritualist, and the ghost-like zealot.
So how do these three treasures actually interact to prevent these deformed life roads? How do we achieve the alchemy of balance?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the framework uses a brilliant elemental metaphor. It points out that earth, water, air, and fire mutually reinforce and neutralize each other in nature.
And in the exact same way, the symmetric balance of the three wealths is what creates a blessing.
Yes, they neutralize each other.
I really want to drill down into that word neutralize, because it's so vital. It's not just that you have these three treasures sitting side by side in separate buckets.
Right, they actively regulate each other. Your spiritual wealth, your empathy, and your social connections neutralizes the greed and destructiveness that might arise from your material wealth.
And your material wealth, the daily requirement to do practical work, chop wood, pay bills, that neutralizes the maniacal, ghost-like tendencies of your soul wealth.
Because it forces you to keep your feet firmly on the ground. You can't float away into a delusion if you have to focus on fixing a leaky roof.
That makes so much sense. And then in turn, your soul wealth gives ultimate meaning to your daily labor and your relationships, preventing you from becoming that bored, constantly moving animal.
It's a self-regulating ecosystem.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? It means that true wealth isn't about maximizing one stat on your character sheet. Ignoring any single one actively destroys the value of the other two.
If your ecosystem is out of balance, the whole thing crashes and guarantees a deformity in your character, which logically leads us to the most practical question. What does this perfect life actually look like day to day?
The prescription provided is actually very actionable. It starts with a commitment to the lifelong learning of knowledge and skills.
Keeping the mind sharp, which covers the spiritual side.
Exactly. Then, using those skills, you must engage in hard, honest work to acquire a proper amount of material wealth.
Notice the deliberate use of the word proper there. It specifically warns against taking the pursuit of material wealth as life's ultimate purpose.
Right. You acquire a constant, proper amount to sustain yourself securely, but you never allow yourself to become a slave to it.
You build the foundation, but you don't spend your entire life just pouring more and more concrete.
From there, you actively love nature, you cherish your family and friendships, and you honor a good reputation in your community.
And simultaneously, you work to comprehend the revelations of the divine, revere the Creator, and constantly work on self-refinement.
It is a path of perpetual motion. The imagery used to describe a life lived in this balance is incredibly poetic. It says it's like being a clear stream.
That metaphor was really striking. It describes this stream falling from a head source, cheering and jumping across valleys, winding its way to the vast ocean, singing all the way.
It evokes such a profound sense of joyful, purposeful momentum. You aren't stagnant like a pond of hoarded money.
And you aren't evaporating into the air like an untethered ghost.
You are a grounded, powerful, moving force of nature. And every stream eventually reaches the ocean, which represents the ultimate endgame of this philosophy.
For those who maintain this balance to the end of their lives, the framework offers a really beautiful promise. It says that the ultimate result is getting your wishes fulfilled and paying off your mortal debts.
It talks about understanding the mystery of life and ultimately meeting death with joy and excitement to reach the Elysium world.
Which represents a state of ultimate peaceful culmination. That joy is the ultimate indicator of a perfectly lived life in this framework.
Because you aren't clinging to your material possessions in terror as you age. You understand your life was a balanced ecosystem, simply transferring its energy onward.
It completely reframes the human life cycle. Death is no longer a tragedy of losing your hoarded wealth. It is the joyful conclusion of a well-played game.
That is an incredibly profound lens through which to view our daily struggles. So just to recap the journey of this deep dive, true wealth is a trifecta.
You absolutely must have the physical foundation to survive without becoming a burden.
You need the mental and emotional richness to connect with others.
And you need the soulful energy to find ultimate meaning.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a slightly different angle to mull over, especially given the digital age we're navigating today.
Oh, this is a great point. Because we spend massive amounts of our time building digital avatars, cultivating online clout, and interacting with AI systems.
Which feels like it's almost creating an entirely new artificial category of wealth.
Is building an online empire a form of spiritual wealth because it involves reputation, or is it a complete illusion that actually drains your real-world ecosystem?
That's the real question. If we are obsessively hoarding digital validation, which of the three true treasures are we actively starving?
Look at the sicknesses we discussed. Feeling like a walking corpse, being prone to hot-tempered outbursts, or feeling the urge to just be a hedonistic parasite.
Based on those symptoms, which of the three foundational treasures, material, spiritual, or soul, is currently running lowest in your own life's inventory?
And what is one tangible action you can take tomorrow to begin bringing your personal ecosystem back into symmetric balance?
It really makes you evaluate where you're spending your energy. We spend so much time terrified of going bankrupt in our bank accounts, but maybe the real question is, which treasure are you quietly letting starve?